of tips today to help you with getting your hands and wrists comfortable when you're on all fours. I'll do some demos using blocks and using a chair, and then have a play and incorporate the ones that work for you into your normal practice. The first thing to consider when you're using blocks is what height you want them. And obviously each block has got 3 different heights, and your decision will depend in part on what you're doing with your legs. So for example, if I want to come from all fours through to a lunge, I'll tend to have the block higher. Whereas if I want to put more weight through my hands, such as coming up into a plank, I'll take the blocks lower. But work out where your starting point is for blocks. Maybe you want them on the lowest setting and you find that's fine for your shoulders and wrists. And then don't be afraid to change the angles depending on what you're doing with the rest of your body. And please don't think that using blocks on all fours is in any way affecting the quality of your yoga practice. For a lot of us, all fours just like this is a huge amount of pressure on our wrists, particularly if you've got maybe slightly shorter arms or, in contrast, a longer upper leg. So definitely play around with blocks and find that nice starting height that you use as your default, and then don't be afraid to change that height as you go. Having said that, a lot of us still find that while blocks take the pressure off the shoulders, the wrist joint still hurts. So some extra points to play around with. First option is to make fists. And that will change the muscles that you use throughout your hands and your arms quite a lot. It might be that you'd like to alternate. You do a cycle of whatever you're doing with the hands and fists, then a cycle with hands flat. And that might be the release that your wrists need. Another option is to try actually holding on to the whole block so you can pick it up. And that gives your fingers a bit more work to do, takes the pressure slightly off the wrists, and just spreads your weight a bit more. So that's something that some people find helpful. Likewise, you might find it's helpful to have the blocks slightly turned out, slightly turned in, maybe a little bit wider than you're used to setting them. Personally, I find that puts too much pressure on my shoulders, but lots of people find that's quite helpful. Likewise, you might find that having the blocks a little bit closer than normal is a way to just support your hands differently. So do play around with the position of the blocks. They don't have to run parallel if that's not comfortable for you. And they don't have to be directly under your shoulders if that's not comfortable for you. Okay. My third suggestion with blocks is to say that you don't have to have your hands on them at all. There's no reason why you couldn't bring elbows to blocks and still do most poses on all fours. So you can see here, I've got my blocks on their highest setting. They are quite thick blocks, which helps with this. Elbows are on blocks. I've interlaced my fingers, so my hands aren't working at all. And I've got a pretty flat back there. So most of the all fours poses are now available to me. You're working your upper arms more here, but your lower arms and your hands aren't working at all. So particularly if you've got a hand injury or your arthritis is playing up, that can be a really good option. So blocks are done. The same processes apply with a chair. And again, I would say to you, if you're at all concerned about coming down to all fours and then getting up from it again, definitely use a chair because it's so helpful with the pose itself, but also with those transitions. So the advantage is that you tend to begin kneeling a bit higher. I've actually disappeared from view there. And again, you can play around with your hand position. You might hold on to the front of the chair. You might place the hands on the chair so they're not gripping. You might bring the elbows onto the chair and hold on to the back. The seat of this chair is actually about the length of my arm from elbow to fingertip. So that's a really good position for me. I get a bit of grip from the hands. My elbows take the majority of my weight. And that can be really comfortable. And again, if you try this with one chair and it doesn't feel right, try another chair, because it might be that the chair that you've got in the spare bedroom is the one that's the ideal height and length for you. So just Again, experimenting. Where do you want the hands? Where do you want the elbows? Do you actually need your arms to be a bit higher? So if the chair feels too low, maybe hold on to blocks on the chair. Likewise, if the chair is too high, popping a pillow or a bolster underneath your legs might be an option. So have a play with all those options. Once you've found your sweet spot, use it as much as suits you. If you find that it's the way for you to go from struggling through an hour's class to making it pretty comfortable for your upper body, do it all the time. If you think that maybe you just need to know you've got that option in your back pocket for moments when you're getting a bit tired or moments when you're trying a new pose and you want that extra confidence that your hands aren't going to let you down, just keep it to one side and come back to it whenever works for you. Other options for hands are available, and if you find that blocks and chairs aren't doing it for you, have a chat with me and we can talk about handles, which can be very helpful, and also about cork wrist rests, which is quite hard to say. Okay, I hope that helps and I'll see you soon.